All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us for What's Eating You. This is week 1, and my name is Shannon Smith, and I'm super excited to be here with you all tonight. So I'll tell you a little bit about me before I dive in. I am an Arbonne consultant, as you can tell by the poster. I've been doing that for 8.5 years, but before that, I was an eating disorder nurse, and I still am, and I work part-time in an inpatient eating disorder setting. So I do that Thursdays and Fridays, and I absolutely love my job. I'm super passionate about working with women. And the reason I started this workshop a year ago, and I've just run it consecutively since then, is I've noticed for a very long time that you don't have to have an eating disorder diagnosis to have food and weight and body image affect your life in a big way. So I wanted to offer something for the general public because I was just hearing a lot of comments from people about, cheating on diets, or I'm being good today, I'm being bad today in terms of their eating. And I just thought, it's just really, it kind of hurt me that people were shaming themselves so much around their food and their weight. So I thought, well, maybe I could offer something that could potentially help. And the rest is history. We've been just running this workshop back to back to back, and it's been really great, and it's been super fun for me. I know that might sound a little bit weird, but it actually is my joy to run this. It's like the highlight of my week every week. So thank you all for being part of this one. So let's tell you a little bit about what you can expect in the program and what you can expect each week. So each week I'm going to do about 20 to 30 minutes of teaching, and the group will run for an hour. So the remaining time that we have, I'm going to open it up for an open chat. I record the first part, so my teaching part is recorded, but I stop the recording for when we are chatting, because I want you guys to be able to feel as candid as you want to feel. So quick overview, week 1 tonight is your thoughts and feelings about your eating. And just so you know, if tonight really resonates with you and you want to share it with a friend or a sister or a brother or whoever in your life, you can certainly invite them on to week 2 and just share the recording of week 1 for them. So that happens a lot. Like, people don't really know what to expect. They hear week 1 and they're like, oh, this person in my life could really benefit. So I just want you to know that that's a possibility as well. So next week, we're going to get into how to manage urges to overeat. Week 3 is your body image. And then week 4, we do a wrap up and we just share experiences and kind of close off the workshop. So we'll jump right into week 1. Actually, I think I flipped. No, that's okay. I'm just going to cover a couple quick things before I jump into the content. Obviously, confidentiality is really important. So whenever you can wear headphones, I recommend them if you're not in a private space, because obviously during the chat portion, there will be people sharing some stuff that would be good to keep confidential. Beyond that, participation is completely up to you how much you want to participate. You can have your camera on or off. I'm never going to like single you out and like to talk during the discussion. And that is all going to be based on you volunteering if you feel like doing that. So I want you to know that much. I always ask that people really consider showing up for themselves in a few ways. So week 1 is one thing to come and be here, but it's a 4-week program. It can get a little bit more difficult as the weeks go on to bring yourself to sit in front of the Zoom when you've had a long day, right? But what I just say is, if you can just show up for yourself at the time that this starts and press, like, just click on the link. That's all you have to do, really. And then showing up for yourself in terms of, if you have a question, if you have a little intuitive nudge that is telling you to ask a question, I encourage you to do that, because I guarantee that there are multiple other people on the line who could benefit from hearing your question as well. So just kind of like push yourself a little bit to do that. Okay, so week 1 is all about noticing. So the goal here is not to change anything this week, but to simply pay attention to your thoughts and feelings about your eating. So question for you guys. Have you ever been on a diet or a meal plan and not stuck with it? I see some nods already. Yes. Yeah. So, and you can put whatever you want in the chat as well. If you guys want, you can unmute, or you can just listen. But I think this is pretty common that people have tried multiple diets, meal plans, and just kind of given up. How did you feel when you gave up on it? If you can think back to that, what went through your head? Okay, chat is blowing up now, so we'll go there. Failure, defeated, yep. Shame, yep. Just, I never finish anything. Yeah, so defeated, yeah. Yeah, those are really common responses. Shame, so a lot of shame, a lot of defeat, discouragement. Sometimes people say frustration, anger, guilt, disappointed, yeah. So all very normal reactions to giving up on anything, really. Have you ever wondered why you couldn't stick with it? Like why was that so difficult to stick with? Just give that some thought. That's what we're going to talk about in this workshop. So some people are saying no willpower, not sustainable, self-sabotage, yep. Really common response. Not strong enough, yeah. So yeah, and that's where the shame comes in too, right? Because it's like, not only do you feel shame for giving up, but then you're shaming, you're like, you're adding shame on top of shame for having given up on it. And sometimes it's just, it's like you said, it might not have been a sustainable plan to begin with, right? But it's funny how we can turn that on ourselves and say there's something wrong with me, right? So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about in the workshop, is exactly why it's difficult to stick with these types of things. Okay, so developing this insight is not a little thing, it's absolutely everything. And it's the secret to normalizing your eating habits. And it's also the secret to losing weight and keeping it off, if that is something that your body is looking to do. So what's this big secret? The secret is you don't have a food problem, you have a pain problem. I'm going to say it again. You don't have a food problem, you have a pain problem. And I'm talking about emotional pain, an emotional pain problem. And really the food or the eating is just a symptom of that underlying problem. And that is why diets don't work and things don't stick, because we're not actually looking at the root cause of the issue. We're just trying to put a Band-Aid on that. And what I've seen from experience is your degree of struggle with eating is proportionate to your degree of unprocessed emotional pain. So the more you're struggling with your eating and weight gain, the more unprocessed emotional pain you have. Typically, that's typical, the typical response. Just like anything else, right? If you were going to alcohol as a coping mechanism, the more you were drinking, it would be a pretty like logical conclusion that the more you were drinking, the more emotional pain you had that you were trying to numb, right? So what happens with emotional pain is it actually erodes your self-worth. And your self-worth is what puts the ceiling on your life. So if your self-worth is low, you have limiting beliefs about what you're able to accomplish in your life. But as you heal your pain, you improve the quality of your life, because your self-worth starts to come up and you start to believe that more things are possible for you. So this work that you're doing in this workshop is very worthwhile. So you may be wondering why you eat when you're sad and why you eat when you're happy and every emotion in between. So how did you get here? Let's start at the very beginning. So you were born perfect with the ability to nourish yourself. So as a healthy baby, when a baby's born, there's actually been studies done where babies will be laid on their mother's chests when they're born, and they will kind of like wriggle their way over to the nipple to have the first feed. It's like fascinating how they do this. They actually lay them on the stomach and they'll wiggle all the way up. So innately you had that drive to feed yourself and to also end the feed when you were satisfied. So if anybody's had a baby or seen a baby take a feed and then pop off, and we have the little dribble of milk come down their chin, and we've said, oh, they're milk drunk. They know how to stop when they're done, generally speaking, unless there's some kind of medical issue. So why does this become a struggle as an adult? Well, somewhere along the way, food loses its neutrality. So it's no longer neutral. It becomes more than a source of fuel or energy because we start to attach emotions to it. And this does happen even as a baby in the first year of life, when a baby starts teething and they're using the breast or the nipple to self-soothe. Emotions start to get attached into eating at that young age even. And it makes sense that the more uncomfortable our environment, the more we're going to use food as comfort, right? So baby's teething really badly, who's been up all night with a baby trying to soothe a baby who's teething? It's no different for us if our life is chaotic. Let's say we've got, stressors in multiple different areas of our lives. That's just going to trigger us to use food to comfort us even more. And it starts off as an occasional thing that we go to self-soothe, and then we progress to using food daily to numb emotional pain. So it just becomes a habit. And food is just one of many options we have for numbing. So can anybody think of any other numbing behaviors? All right, let's check the chat here. Retail therapy. I love it. Yep, I definitely did that yesterday. Alcohol, scrolling, yes. Smoking, yep. Scrolling, Facebook or Instagram, social media, yes. It's a big one. Big one. Yeah, any of those things. Some other ones are gossiping. So if you've ever felt distressed about something going on in your life and you call up a friend and you start talking about somebody else's problems, that can be a way to kind of numb out and distract yourself from having to deal with your own issues. Starting a fight, yeah, picking fights. There you go, Rebecca. Picking fights with your significant other. So if you've ever been in a fight and thought, like, why are we even fighting? Like, how did this happen? That can be a way to numb or distract yourself from what's really going on in your life. Sex is another one. So some people just go to that because they don't want to have to process things. So they just go to like physical gratification in different ways. So those are just a few. But with food, it's harder to reverse the use of it to numb because we need it several times a day to live. So really, like almost everything else on the list, you can quit cold turkey. Like you can put down, but with food, you can't. You still have to have exposure to food. So it's a little trickier. So to reverse a food addiction, we have to reverse the use of food as a numbing agent. And how do we do that? Well, we have to use our courage and choose to face our painful emotions head on, which is simple but not easy, because the longer we've numbed pain, the more acute it's going to feel when we do face it. And it takes courage to do this. And our conditioning is feel pain, numb with food, right? So when we're not numbing and we feel more pain, we're going to have an even stronger urge to numb with more food. But there are strategies to cope with this, and that's what we get into next week. So just to end off the teaching part for this week, some things to be aware of next week as you are just noticing are food labels. So just notice how much you may be putting food into good or bad categories. Like, is that something that you do? This food's good, this food's bad. This food's healthy, unhealthy, junk, garbage, light, heavy, clean, dirty, whole, toxic, fattening, decadent, indulgent. These are just some food labels. Start to witness how often you're using them and how it makes you feel to use them. Does it make you feel empowered? Does it make you feel shame? What emotions are attached to using those labels? And then also there's the effect of food paradigms. So things like, this is my guilty pleasure, or don't ruin your appetite, garbage in, garbage out, you are what you eat, clean your plate, or there are starving children in the world. So these are some of the messages that a lot of us have grown up hearing over and over, and we haven't necessarily questioned them. But when you really look at some of them, they can be attached to certain negative emotions like shame. So just if you hear any of these next week or hear yourself using them, just observe. That's all you're doing this week, is you're just observing. But when we do grow up with these labels and these paradigms, we start to think of the foods we eat as a reflection of who we are. So, and this is what I was noticing. This is the whole reason why I started the workshop, because I noticed people, saying, I'm being good today. No, I'm not going to have that. I'm being good today. And I was like, you're being good, or a good person has nothing to do with the food that you're choosing. But it's just something that has become conditioned over time. So, and the slippery slope that I see is, that whole statement of I'm being good can over time translate into, well, I'm a good person if I'm eating these certain foods, right? If I'm choosing these certain foods from the good category, that makes me a good person. And that's one thing, but like the damaging piece is the flip side of it. So when we choose a bad food, or say I'm being bad or I'm cheating today, that can over time become I'm a bad person. So if I eat this, it's shameful. Like I shouldn't ever touch this certain type of food. And of course, like societal messages just compound that, right? And so instead of just feeling guilt for choosing the quote unquote bad foods, it becomes shame. Like I'm a bad person. That's a shame statement. So that's one thing I'm very mindful of, and I don't do personally. I don't label foods at all as good or bad. It's just something that I honestly didn't grow up doing, but what was reinforced even more was the eating disorder program reinforced the whole like not labeling foods, and that's just what works for me. I choose not to label foods for that reason, but that's the other thing about this program. You choose what resonates with you and leave the rest. So if something's working for you and you don't want to change it, you don't have to change it. Okay, but before we know it, the whole range of human emotions can be attached to food when we have these labels. And that is from joy and empowerment to guilt and shame. So it runs the whole spectrum. And the other thing to observe this week is, do you have food rules? And what are they, and why do you have them? So are there certain foods that you allow yourself to eat and certain foods that you don't allow yourself to eat? And how long has it been since you've not allowed yourself to eat that certain food or foods? And why is that? Could be a very legitimate reason. For some people, it's like, I don't know why I stopped eating that. Like, I really don't. I used to love it. Right? And so just starting to look at things like that. And then the 4 types of eating. So this is something you can look at as well over the next week. So what eating categories are you falling into, and what percentage of time are you falling into each of these 4? And no judgment at all. So if you can just observe without shaming yourself or judging yourself, there's no category that's inherently better than another. We all eat in all of these categories, just so you know, and that they will always be a part of our lives in some way. But it's just observing and having that baseline. Yeah, I'm just reading the chats. Oh, I'm cutting in and out. Okay, sorry guys. Can you hear me now? Sound is good here.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good, Shannon.
I'm okay now? Okay. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't notice that. All
I
right.
didn't hear the cutting out part.
Okay. I'm almost done my speaking part anyways, so I think we're okay. All right, so fuel eating is the first type of eating. Does anybody want to hazard a guess at what fuel eating might be? What might define fuel eating?
I'm gonna say fuel eating would be like to fuel your body, like say after a workout or just like at your regular meal time, just to fuel it, to give it energy so you can continue it through your day.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, Michelle. And it's different foods for different people. So fuel foods for one person may be different than for other people. But yeah, it's exactly that. Just eating for energy. Like, you know, calories are energy, literally. They're a measure of energy. So there's no real emotion attached to fuel eating. It's just like an example I use for me is like when I'm shaking up a protein shake and like just downing it on the way out the door to work. It's literally just because I need fuel in my body, but there's no real emotion or even like enjoyment attached to it when I'm just downing it like that. It's just that I know I need something in my body to fuel me. Joy eating. So what would joy eating be? What does that look like? Celebrations, yes, Jade. Yeah, parties, celebration, yes, absolutely. So, yeah, like comfort foods, right? Like Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas, birthdays. You know, if you've, I don't know, like a lot of people have the tradition when they're growing up, or they have like a birthday dinner. Yeah, they go out with friends. We're gonna do a lot of joy eating when all the restaurants reopen. Gelato, yes. Who's this, Jenna? Oh yeah, gelato for sure. My mom and I were in Italy. Like this was, oh my gosh, 26 years ago. No, 16 years ago. I was gonna say. I'm not that old, am I? But she came over and I was already there backpacking, and she came over for the last 2 weeks, and we had gelato every single day, like twice a day in Italy. Like we're like, what other gelato place can we find? It was so good. Yeah, so it's a really good memory. It's one of the biggest memories I have from that trip with my mom. But yeah, the things you love to eat, your favorite. So yeah, what's your favorite type of food? Do you like Chinese? Do you like Italian? Do you like Thai? Do you like Indian? Like, yeah, I'm a foodie, can you tell? Yeah, so that's joy eating. Fog eating. What would fog eating be? Eating while watching TV? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably like, yeah, mindless eating. Hungover eating. Yeah. Block out all emotions. Yeah, so, yep. Bored, oblivious. Yeah, you guys are all bang on. So fog eating, it like probably the best example is kind of the mindless eating that we do. Period eating. Katie. Yeah. Yeah, Rebecca, you're such a good student. Rebecca, you can tell you've been in the course before. So that's the example I usually use is like you're sitting in front of the TV and you have a bag of chips, let's say, and you get to the bottom of the bag of chips and you're like, how did I get here? So it's like the equivalent of, you know, when you've been driving your car and you get home and you're like, I don't even remember the drive because you're just kind of on autopilot. That's fog eating. You guys, your comments are hilarious. So that's fog eating. So yeah, it's mindless. You're just kind of like obliviously eating. Yeah, period eat. I've never heard somebody, but that's true. Like you do, like on your period, that often happens. You're just like, I just need to like constantly eat. And then storm eating. What would storm eating be? How would that look? Any guesses? Okay, couple chats. Eating because you're upset, angry eating when you're mad. Yeah, eating really fast. Yeah, anxious. Everything in sight. Stressful day. Eating everything. Yeah. So, I mean, you could be stressed or anxious or angry for sure, but it's mostly that it feels out of control. So it feels out of control. It's like fog eating where you're kind of mindless, but it's more frantic than that. And usually larger quantities of food. So it may or may not be like true binge eating. Like some people on the call, they may experience like a true binge where their calorie intake would be like a day's worth of calories in one sitting. But others, you may be storm eating without eating like that amount of food. But it's really that feeling of it's a loss of control, and usually you wouldn't want somebody to kind of walk in on you eating like that. Like there'd be some shame, like you and wanting to hide that type of eating. So that's storm eating. I came across those categories a couple years ago on a podcast, and I thought they were really helpful to sort of observe the types of eating we do. And again, no judgment. Like that's one thing that I always like to start off with is just this program is not about shaming yourself for anything you've done in the past. It's exactly the opposite of that. So when you observe this week, if you're storm eating every night, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Like you're in good company, and especially now in COVID, right? So the whole point is to be able to come back next week and just kind of learn why that's been going on and what to do about it if you want to make a change. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to stop. I think that's the last. Oh, yeah. Okay, so just a reminder, week one's all about noticing. And the goal is not to change anything this week, but to simply pay attention to your thoughts and feelings about your eating. So the only exception to that is if you're doing the 30 days to healthy living, you may be making some shifts to your eating. So again, though, just observe how those shifts are having an effect on you mentally, like what thoughts are going through your head, and just being more aware will really help. One thing I'll say about the 30 days, and probably the only thing I'll say about the 30 days in this program, is it's not so much the plan that you're doing, it's the spirit that you're doing it in. So you can do the 30 days with a lens of self-love and say, like, I'm doing this for more energy, and I'm doing this because I love myself and I want to feel better. Or you can do the 30 days out of just, self-hate is a strong word, but it is true for a lot of people, and it's just kind of another thing that you're trying to lose some weight, right? So it's just really important to look at, like, how am I going about this plan? Like, what spirit am I coming to the plan with? Because that can really affect whether or not you can stick to it and what your results end up being. So that's the only thing I'd say. The last thing I'd say about this workshop too is if you are doing the 30 days, we're not going to talk really about 30 days in this workshop, because I'd rather spend the time talking about the emotional side of eating. Like if you're doing the 30 days, you have a fantastic consultant who is like there to coach you through that whole process. So they're definitely the best person to ask any questions about the 30-day program in particular. Okay, so homework for this week. Again, homework is optional. I highly encourage people to do the homework, but it's whatever you want to do. It's again just to start to notice your thoughts and feelings about your eating. You can keep a little journal of any thoughts or feelings that come up if you want to jot them down. And really, again, the questions to pay attention to are you making your food choices out of love or out of fear? And which of the 4 types of eating are you doing and how often? Okay, so I'll stop the recording, stop the screen sharing, and we can open it up for